everyone.
Hello.
So nice to have you. Isn't it amazing to finally have a global corporate venturing conference? Every single conference is just generalistic VCs, and now we have our own thing, which I thought was pretty cool. Anyway, so super happy to have you guys here. The panel is quite great. We have 2 investors, 1 founder, as well as more from the legal world representative as well. So maybe we'll just kick off with very brief intros. I'm Gabrielle, head of XTX Ventures. We mostly back quite a bit of AI infrastructure as well as compute technologies. Clément?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Very, very happy to be here. It's a very nice event. So very brief introduction. I'm founder and CEO of EDA. And EDA, we're providing softwares for VC, CVC, corporate ventures, family offices, and investment bank. And the point is to bring the most advanced technologies to this world and training you guys to avoid using Excel. And so we are currently operating into 40 different countries and having roughly 200 funds using the platform, which represents around 300 billion on administration. Thank you for having me.
My name is Thomas Schubert. I'm partner of Dentons in the Berlin office. I'm doing a lot of tech M&A work and climate tech. I'm leading our German energy team and a corporate M&A group, and doing much work around everything related to the energy transition and all the climate tech solutions which play there. And infrastructure becomes more and more relevant in that space, and that's happy to have a discussion with you on the topic. Thank you for having me.
So good morning. My name is Manat Navarrete from Kickstart Ventures. I represent the interests of Globe Telecom, as well as the Philippines' first business house, Ayala Corporation. So those of you familiar with Asia will know that conglomerates are the main structure for capital allocation and investment. So that represents banks, property, mobility, energy, health, a whole range of things. We do early stage investing globally.
And good afternoon. My name is JD Engelhardt. I'm a senior investment director at InQtel, based here in London. We're a private nonprofit that was set up by the US government in 1999 to invest in venture-backed technologies relevant to the national security of the US and our allies. Looking forward to the conversation.
Cool. So when we think about AI infrastructure, often we right away go into data centers, right? What is one critical infrastructure system, and you can only say one, pick one, that will be fundamentally transformed the most by AI, or is actually fundamentally being transformed right now by AI in the coming few years?
Let's do jump. I can start. I mean, for me, it's quite clear. There is a paradox that we're trying to solve. It's actually, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going to talk about your job. But so the point is, the investors are working with a lot of companies, and so you guys have to gather a lot of data from a lot of different companies. But usually, investors get a small team, and so which is the difference with companies who usually have a big teams, and they of course have a little bit less data than the investors, and so. That's why I think the impact on AI on finance in general will be very important, because of course, I mean, you can talk about taking decisions or not, but the point is AI is really good at reading information and make it accessible, and that's why I think finance really need that right now. So I think we underestimate the impact on AI on finance when everything's going to be fully transparent and people are going to get access to every single information into every single document they sign. During the past 20 years, I think
so
it's going to be quite important, yeah.
And I would maybe just echo Clément a little bit and say that AI is going to help scale the precious human capital resources that your organizations already have.
Yeah.
So specifically in my world, we talk a lot about AI-enabled cybersecurity, and that doesn't replace human operatives or human operators, human security practitioners, but it enables them to do more with the finite resources that they have.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah,
I would say data, but also decision-making, and particularly decision-making under imperfect circumstances. So when there is disruption, when there is a change, when data is unavailable, then the decision-making processes and systems must be available, must have some resiliency for operations as well as for finance.
I'd like to add maybe just more broadly, the impact on infrastructure as such of AI on infrastructure is super relevant, especially on the grid. I mean, it used to be something which was quite, passive. You just, put in base load supply by electrons, and then there was an offtake. And now with all the smart grids, you can only properly operate with having the respective tools available, which of course means having a smart grid infrastructure, understanding it, but then having AI, understanding how will production develop over the day, offtake and so on, and just balance out the whole thing. And what I'm seeing in the growth space is that there are more and more entrepreneurs or young startups looking in the direction to become a kind of like AI-only energy supplier, meaning that they don't want to do the mistakes, from the old industry, but they rebuild something just on AI, and so a huge impact in that area as well.
Yeah. So we've been like for years and years talking about efficiency, right? Efficiency, especially right now about compute efficiency. And yet our panels, one of the words is also resilience, right? What is resilience? And also, would you have an example of a system that is extremely resilient and yet not as efficient today, or the other way around?
Countries. Right?
Yeah, governments.
Governments, yeah.
Yes.
As an infrastructure, right?
I mean, there is this law that is more a system is lean, more it's fragile. And so that's why, I mean, this is, we're moving to politics a little bit, but this is super French. I'm sorry about that. But I have to say that that the thing is sometimes, there is we can see a lot of politics talking about like, okay, are we going to make the government so efficient? Are we going to, just cutting the costs as much as we can. But the issue with that is like, actually, one more time, you make the system more fragile. And so a state shouldn't be managed as a company. And I'm saying that as a company founder. But I think companies are great. The point is to maximize, your profit, to maximize your growth, to go as fast as possible. But it's okay because there is no single mom, raising kids in poor condition that depend on your decision. So I think it's very, very different, and that's my point. I think we should keep the government a bit more costly.
So by that definition, resilience is kind of connected to speed, right? To speed and ability to iterate fast. What else is what is resilience for you in connection with AI infrastructure specifically?
I wouldn't maybe not so much put it really on the point of acting fast, but really being prone to attacks against infrastructure. And I mean, looking at it from governmental level, this is what we see in the European Union, for example, that they've implemented a couple of rules to make infrastructure or force companies that are critical for the overall system to be resilient enough. So this is on the hardware level where certain security levels are being upset, and you have to comply with these levels. You have to report. So a lot of reporting infrastructure beyond it. But the purpose really is to make these companies or businesses or sectors prone against attacks. And then the other thing is, and this has become more and more important, is all the cybersecurity. So the NIS2 directive, there are again reporting obligations, certain measures that you have to implement to be resilient. So I would rather think, well, on one hand, really it's the government state to be resilient as such. And on the other hand, make sure that all the economy around also follows certain rules, because I would think if you wouldn't have these rules, likely certain companies may play a little more risky, especially if you're not like in a sector where you perceive yourself to be, exposed to attacks or threats from the outside.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, resilience to me means maintaining operations and sustaining availability when under threat from an adversarial actor, whether that's a nation state or a cyber criminal, or maybe just in a really intense heat wave. Our systems are fragile and they're under stress this week. So, finding backups, redundancies, failovers, things that kind of increase the sustainability of that capability.
Actually, I think that's a good point to start from. Historically, we've thought about resilience as business continuity through redundancy. I'm sure everybody's got these, 3-inch thick manuals about how to operate. But I think in a world where there is AI, you've got to move from the redundancy solution to the predictive, preventive solutions, and maybe the rapid postmortems so that each incident leaves us stronger. We pick up where there are gaps, we pick up where there's opportunity to create more resilient, more flexible systems.
Nice. Okay, so speed, regulation, backups. So from that perspective, maybe both Minette and JD, investment, are those the areas that you're kind of pouring capital in as well? And are there any areas that are completely overlooked today and should be sort of, will surprise us in 5 years?
Gosh, I think the honest answer is not enough and not fast enough. If you just think about the last 5, 6 years, all the supply chain disruptions, the pandemic, all the stuff we have lived through, these disruptions point out where there have been gaps, whether it's countrywide or corporate-wide. We are trying to put in quite a bit more. So I represent the telco, and in addition to typical fiber and cellular installations, we are now doing broadband over lasers. We've built a partnership with Starlink. So all these things, because connectivity now is a critical need. It is part of the infrastructure of everyday life. So
100%.
can't invest fast enough and enough.
And maybe just to provide another example, I know it's not AI or kind of inherently AI, but I think broadly speaking, the West has outsourced its manufacturing of pharmaceutical products to low-cost places, and in times of need, in times of constrained supply chains, you cannot get those products. I was in a conversation yesterday. Some of the people around the defense luncheon probably heard Eileen say something like, most of the GLP-1s that are being used in places like Europe and the US, all of the precursor chemicals and ingredients are made in China. So what if China just turned off GLP-1s to the West? That would, anger a lot of people.
Yeah. So investment themes, resilience, maybe one for Clément as well. At which point does the software become infrastructure from the founders and clients' perspective, and maybe any investor perspectives? At what point and what defines that it's not anymore just like a software system, but it's actually infrastructure layer for a client?
No, I think especially for what we do is very clear because for our clients, the entire data of the firm rely on our system. Yeah. So because we at EDA, when you use EDA, you can track all the information about a company from the very first email to the exit so we track from the sourcing to the LP's report. And so all of the data, everything that you collect is on EDA. So if there is any mistakes, if there is any crash, if for some reason something goes wrong, the funds can lose everything. And when you lose the data, it's going to be, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be quite complex to continue running the fund without any information about your portfolio companies, your deal flow companies. I think there is another part which is, I think during the previous panel, the one right before, someone was saying the quality of the data into this sector is quite hard, especially in early stage. And so it's because every document looks different, every captables look different, and that's why we're launching a new system where actually you can just upload the legal docs and the system will generate the captables automatically at the new format that is actually standard format and everything. So for me, this is part of the infrastructure. And the other point is, I think there is a data sovereignty and privacy that is also very important. So we need to make sure that every state can be independent in the way they manage the future of innovation in their countries. One of the examples is we're working with BPI France, which is the Public Investment Bank in France. And of course, they invest in a lot of different French companies. And that means the future of the technology in France is stored in our servers at some point. So we need to make sure that this data will be accessible no matter what happened. And so, for example, if they do a mistake, we copy the data into different servers across Europe to make sure that even if something goes wrong, we can always go back to the previous, to the previous version. Yeah. So yeah, that's
okay. So it sounds quite sticky, right? It's harder to rip off, basically, parts of that. So today we're seeing infrastructure, AI, transforming the grid, right? Transforming transportation networks, communication across telcos and everywhere. it's hard not to discuss vulnerabilities and regulation, public safety that comes with it. I know JD, you kind of think about quite a few things within your portfolio, how you kind of go around it, and maybe Thomas, if you have a little bit to add from kind of regulatory perspective, how do we assure that yes, there's innovation, that yes, there's kind of extremely interesting technologies being brought to market, transforming the way sort of we conduct different ways of life. But at the same time, how do we make sure that there is regulation, which often comes in late and overcorrects. But at the same time, how do you think about vulnerability, innovation versus kind of regulation?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go first.
Maybe the first thing I'll say, and hopefully this will lead nicely into what you can add. I think one of the biggest constraints that a lot of my portfolio companies have is just availability of power, high quality power, available power when it's needed at a reasonable price. So that to me is a fundamental constraint that we're seeing now. That's the limiting factor. That's the choke point, as chips were the choke point in 2020 and 2021. So, understanding regulatory squishiness, understanding, fast tracking, power are all things that, I want to get smarter on and I'm trying to understand so that my portfolio companies can benefit.
Yeah. I mean, speaking about regulation, there are different views on it because, looking at it more generally, you may perceive innovation as being an obstacle to innovation because, it's limiting the things that you want to do and, imposing costs on the businesses to apply by the rules. But if you look at it a little more deeply, and Europe is a partially maybe over-regulated continent, but if you look at it more deeply, there's a certain benefit by regulation, which may even foster innovation. And just to give you a couple of examples, again, that's the climatic space. So if you now take the example of phasing out from coal and nuclear, that's preventing, of course, these technologies, but also motivating companies to go into other sectors and arrange for the power supply that you've been speaking of. So that's one way you can do, or the legislator can take. The other way is, for example, that they let the market rule, more or less to say, which they do, for example, by carbon taxing. So you put a price on emissions, and suddenly companies are moving in the direction to lower their emissions by deploying new technologies, just by the mere fact that there's a price on emission. Super easy, super market approach, and again, super efficient by the end of the day. So EU ETS, for example, is a super efficient scheme that reduced carbon emissions in the last 20 years by 50%. So very successful. And then the third thing, of course, a regulator can take is it's providing subsidies and so on. And but then again, it's the regulator or the state government to pick the sector that they want to support. And oftentimes they are not the most innovative ones, let's put it like that. So I'm a big fan of the market approach. But this always has to be combined, and it's now getting back to like energy infrastructure and scarcity of power supply. There has to be an efficient regulatory and permitting process. And what we're currently seeing in the European market is that there are companies that want to supply to the grid, but they don't get grid access, or the grid isn't properly built out at the time because the legislator or government was too late in fostering these. So therefore, it's a combination of both. But I'd say in the essence of it, if you do it right, it is supporting innovation, even though we are preventing certain things or try to direct them in a certain direction.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I can just jump on that very quickly. I think what you're saying is really right. And there is two things that sometimes people forget. Is actually innovation is usually coming from constraint. So the more you have constraint, more it's forced you to find the best way to innovate and to create some elegant way to solve a problem. That's sometimes something people forget. And as a founder, you need to take care of that kind of things.
That's also quite French of you too.
I'm sorry about that. But I think it's true. And I think it's Walt Disney. We are adding like a more constraint to this team to make sure that what they come up is actually very creative. And so that's one thing. And the second thing is regulation. Of course, it's sometimes could be quite heavy, but also it creates some standards. Yeah. And in a lot of industry, we need more standards. And so it forces people to follow the same framework. And it's also very useful if you want to scale then some problematics. So, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe just a short add-on to bridge between over-regulation and
of course, there is a balance to find.
No, but I think one technique that I have seen in operation is just regulators building sandboxes. I've seen it in Central Bank in the Philippines. I've seen it in the FSA in the UK. And in each case, to have a well-defined sandbox allows for innovation, allows for experimentation without compromising the broader public good.
Right.
Great. Okay, quick segue into geopolitics. We have, UK, Philippines, Germany, France, Lithuania. Are we moving towards, thinking about supply chain dynamics, different infrastructure layers? Are we moving towards countries working together? Or are we moving into regional kind of systems of infrastructures kind of competing with each other? Anyone?
I'll jump in and say working together. But it is a working together with an understanding of you build different supply options. You look for, I heard the phrase earlier, most favored pricing, maybe, but you still have to have your option B, option C, because these days we don't know where the disruption comes from. So I think the partnering piece and understanding which layer where you seek self-sufficiency and where you seek alternatives works, certainly from a Philippine perspective.
Very diplomatic answer, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Europe, and let's see how the French view is similar to the German one.
I won't jump on this topic. I think it's.
What did you see, and this has been over the last couple of years already, is all that French shoring. So we do live in a super interconnected world on one hand, and on the other hand, there's this French shoring, bringing your production capacities back home, and you've just given some good examples for that. So I would say, speaking from a European perspective, at least for continental European countries, and well, possibly including the UK, it means that we will have a stronger interconnection between these countries, of course, in terms of infrastructure. But again, power infrastructure, there are certain countries which are more, better placed to produce, whereas you got regions where there's more offtake, where you can't install all the production capacity. So there will be interconnection. But on a global level, I do see that we move back to just think within your continent or the system that you're in, and that you start kind of blocking too much interaction with the outside world, which is actually contrary to the way that we are currently all living. But this is what I see happening.
Yeah, I think we're in an era of kind of nearshoring and friendshoring, but I think we're also in an era where governments are looking for strategic leverage in key industries like in AI. So if you can't kind of own the entire stack, maybe you become the best tool maker in the world, and now the Netherlands has ASML. So that's just maybe an example.
Yeah. I don't know if it's because I'm in London, so I feel more French than I am. But I just want to do a little disclaimer. Is actually we built a company, and we got only 3 French people in the team. So I mean, yeah. But of course, independence is very important. But I mean, more seriously, what I can see is during a long time. So we're operating into 40 countries, and so we got clients in the US, clients in the Middle East, in Asia, and also in Europe. And the point is, a couple of years ago, no one really cared about where we store the information.
Yeah.
So people were like, okay, as long as it's accessible, if it's in the US, if it's stored on Alibaba Cloud or in Amazon, no one really care about it. But right now, we get some people who say I want all the data in Europe. I want it under European law. I don't want to use any US system anymore. We get a couple of people who say we don't want to store the information in any US software anymore. Even some clients move to, from Gmail or Outlook to Proton Mail, which is based in Switzerland, and so there is no integration with those tools. So that was actually quite painful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we really see that people now it's a big topic, and people really care about where the data is actually stored.
Yeah, and very last one, energy. AI is consuming a lot of energy, and at what point, and do you believe that finally AI will add to energy efficiency rather than just be a big consumer, right? And it's an open-ended, but do you believe that soon we're still going to see a lot of rather kind of energy consumed until it becomes really?
I think it already is. I think with AI-assisted design simulation, we're accelerating things like nuclear and fission and fusion. So I think it already is.
Yeah.
I'm an optimist.
But also, I'm already seeing startups proposing solutions for much lower energy, low bandwidth AI solutions.
Yeah, say would be my take. I mean, definitely the big change will be in getting new models working that use less of computing capacity, but that reduce the power offtake. But of course, currently we do see that there will be an increase of energy demand, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is this point also is of course for nuclear fusion it will help a lot, especially to control the plasma into the tokamak. So AI will really make that more efficient. I think then there is this big question, which is, should we get more energy? Because more we get energy, more we expand, and more we expand. I mean, yeah, there is no secret, right? So if there is another French guy who said like, if you burn a forest to build a green factory, you still have burned a forest. And I mean, yeah, and so I think the real point is okay. There is also always the question why. I think it's great to build new projects and to build new things, but we need to always ask, do we really need that?
Do we really need that?
Yeah.
We're going to leave it on that. Thank you so much.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
to have
Thank
you
you
all.
for
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.